This is the final prophecy of the monad, and 2027 is not a date on a calendar but a countdown written into the bones of the cosmos. So let me ask you this. What if I told you that time itself is leaning toward a moment you can no longer avoid? Not the awakening promised in churches, not the salvation shouted from pulpits or sealed inside institutions that feed on obedience, but something far older than their scriptures and far more dangerous to their authority, a knowing that existed before doctrine learned how to speak in God's name. And once you hear this, you won't be able to unhear it. The year is 2027, and if you are hearing these words, you have already felt the signal, the quiet unrest that never leaves your chest, the sense that something essential is missing, the inner whisper that says you were taught how to survive but never how to remember. This is not coincidence. It never was. Some move through this world asleep, repeating inherited truths, and others feel a pull they cannot explain, as if a memory is trying to return. And if you're still listening, you already know which one you are. The difference has always been there. What is coming now was buried thousands of years ago, erased in fires, scattered when texts were burned and symbols were declared dangerous, not because they were false, but because they worked. And what is about to be revealed cannot be understood by belief alone, only recognized by the divine spark already awake inside you, the part of you that has been waiting for 2027 without knowing why. The monad spoke once, and it speaks again now, not in words, but in pressure, in gravity, in the quiet force that bends awareness back toward its source. And 2027 is not random. It is a convergence. So let me take you back not to history as you were taught, but to the story that was erased when power learned how to rewrite memory. In the 2nd century, in the deserts of Egypt and within hidden Syrian schools sealed by silence, there were no priests asking for belief and no prophets demanding obedience, only knowers, Gnostics, men and women who did not believe. They knew, and that difference changed everything. What they knew was simple and unbearable to authority, that this world is not sacred by default, that matter itself is a containment field, a beautifully engineered prison, fashioned not by the absolute source but by a lesser maker, the demiurge, a cosmic artisan born of ignorance, mistaking its reflection for the whole. It created form, it created division, it created time that decays, it created bodies that forget, and it did so with help, the archons, not demons with horns but systems, forces, patterns that maintain sleep, that reward conformity, that normalize amnesia, that keep fragments of living light distracted inside routines, fears, identities that are too small. You are not broken. You are displaced. You are not sinful. You are far from home. The prison is not the world. The prison is forgetting. The true source, the monad, exists beyond name, beyond myth, beyond even the idea of a god, and from it emanated living intelligences, aeons, not symbols but structures of consciousness, each one a tone, a movement, a rhythm in the architecture of reality. Time was never a straight line. It was a breathing organism, cycles folding into cycles, aeons rising and receding like tides of awareness. And the ancient knowers mapped these rhythms not to predict events, but to recognize windows. When certain cycles resonate, when aeons align in harmonic sequence, something responds, not in the sky, not in machines, but inside perception itself. A gate does not open outward, it opens inward. And as 2027 approaches, the pressure you feel, the unease, the sense that something is loosening its grip, that something long sealed is beginning to turn, that is not anxiety. That is the mechanism starting to move, and it has only just begun to open. The year 2027 is not a prophecy pulled from hope or fear. It is a convergence point calculated through what the ancients called sacred cycles, a living architecture of time that moves with intention rather than chance, and 3 of these cycles are now collapsing into a single threshold. The first is the cycle of Sophia, the aeon of wisdom whose descent fractured the harmony of the pleroma, a fall not of sin but of overreaching love, the desire to know the source directly, and in that reaching the cosmos of matter was born. In fragmented texts like Pistis Sophia and scattered gospel remnants recovered from sand and ash, Her suffering is described not as myth but as cosmology, her grief condensing into density, her longing becoming gravity, the ache you feel in your body when existence feels heavier than it should. Yet those same texts insist her exile was temporary, that wisdom remembers itself, and when Sophia turns back toward the fullness, her return sends a ripple through every layer of creation, thinning the boundary between spirit and matter. According to the cosmic mathematics preserved in those broken manuscripts, that return cycle reaches resonance in 2027, not as an event in the sky, but as a pressure change in consciousness itself. And the ancient texts were very specific about what happens when that resonance begins. The second cycle is archonic, the rotation of the 7 rulers bound to planetary forces, not gods but governors of perception, each one maintaining a band of forgetfulness around human awareness. Ancient Gnostics and Hermetic astronomers did not read the heavens to predict fortune. They read them as a map of control structures, knowing when those structures weaken. Certain alignments disrupt the signal. Certain ratios break the spell. The convergence marked in 2027 corresponds to one of those rare configurations, when the machinery of delay falters and the veil loses tension, not destroyed but loosened, enough for light to slip through cracks. The third cycle is human, the slow evolution of collective awareness moving in great arcs of roughly 2,000 years, each age shaping how humanity understands power, meaning, and the self. The warrior age, the sacrificial age, the age of obedience and faith, all served their function, but they were never meant to last. We are now crossing the exact threshold between epochs, the final contraction of the old myth and the first expansion of a new one. And 2027 sits at the fulcrum point where these movements overlap. This is why the world feels unstable. This is why anxiety is ambient. This is why so many feel exhausted without knowing why. It is not personal failure. It is the friction of a cosmic transition pressing against nervous systems not designed for amnesia forever. Gnosis was never about belief. It was about remembering, about recognition, about the sudden clarity that arrives when something ancient inside you aligns with something ancient outside you. The pain of being human was always the symptom of separation, the weight of divine light compressed into forms that forgot their origin. As Sophia rises, the echo reaches you. As the cycles converge, memory stirs, and the Gnostics had a word for what begins next. Not awakening, not salvation, but amnesis, the unforgetting, the slow, irreversible return of knowing, as if you have just been handed a map that was always yours, and suddenly the terrain of your own existence starts to make sense, and this remembering unfolds through a sequence that is as ancient as it is intimate, 4 stages that repeat across lifetimes and civilizations, and you will recognize yourself in one of them without being told where you belong. First is shock, the moment the spell breaks, when something you trusted collapses and consensus reality cracks, not with drama but with a quiet horror, a sense that the floor beneath your identity was never solid. And this is why it feels like grief, like disorientation, like the death of the false self you worked so hard to maintain. Then comes the search, restless and obsessive, when you stop accepting official answers and begin following breadcrumbs scattered across forbidden texts, half-remembered symbols, late-night realizations that feel more real than daylight, not because you are lost, but because something in you is finally moving. Third is integration, the most demanding stage, where knowing confronts embodiment, where insight alone is no longer enough, because reading about truth and living from it are not the same thing. And this is where the work turns inward, where patterns dissolve, attachments loosen, and you learn to carry light without using it to escape pain or superiority. Integration is slow. It humbles you. It asks you to stand inside this material prison without being owned by it. And if you continue, there is no return to sleep. Not teaching, not preaching, but resonance. You become a light bearer simply by existing differently, by refusing the reflexes of fear, by not feeding the loops of outrage and distraction. And this is when resistance appears. The archons no longer look like mythic rulers. They arrive as algorithms that bury your voice, media that mocks your clarity, social systems that isolate you with doubt and self-policing thoughts that whisper you should stay quiet, stay small, stay asleep. Control no longer looks like chains. It looks like convenience. This stage is dangerous, not because you are wrong, but because you are visible. The system does not attack what it already owns. Yet even here, the invitation of 2027 remains unchanged. It does not promise rescue, it offers a threshold. As structures fracture and external authorities fail, most will search for another savior, another identity to borrow, another belief to hide inside. But a few will turn inward instead, away from noise, away from spectacle, toward the quiet place where memory lives. Those few were never meant to be many. And if something in you is still listening, still present, still unwilling to look away, then you already know who this message was waiting for. You do not need to wait for 2027 to begin, because awakening is not triggered by dates, it is initiated by attention, and the work starts the moment you choose silence over noise. Not silence as withdrawal, but as precision, the ability to hear beneath the constant static of opinion, outrage, consumption, and fear. The monad does not shout, it does not persuade. It communicates in gaps, in pauses, in the subtle pressure you feel when something is true before you can explain why. Learn to rest there. Learn to listen under the world rather than to it. Study symbols, texts, fragments, not to hoard knowledge or perform spirituality, but to sharpen recognition, to feel when something unlocks rather than impresses. There is knowledge that liberates and knowledge that binds, and the difference is visceral. One expands your inner space, the other contracts it while promising safety. This is discernment, and it is a survival skill. The archonic systems have evolved. They no longer rule through overt force alone. They govern through attention, through emotional hooks, through narratives that feel compassionate while demanding compliance, through systems that collapse your agency while calling it care. As these structures strain under their own contradictions, economic, political, religious, they will crack not as punishment but as consequence. Anything built on denial eventually fails. When that happens, most people will look outward again, searching for a new authority, a new ideology, a new promise to hold on to. But a smaller number will do something else. They will turn inward. They will stop outsourcing meaning. They will remember. This is why connection matters, not as a movement, not as an institution, but as resonance. Isolation keeps you doubting your own perception. Shared clarity dissolves that spell. And yes, fear will surface, because true gnosis removes the comfort of being led. It does not give you certainty. It gives you responsibility. It asks you to stand without guarantees, without saviors, without borrowed identities. That is why most reject it. Not because they cannot understand, but because awakening carries weight. Once you know, you are accountable. You can no longer hide behind ignorance or wait for rescue. The path does not flatter you. It returns you to yourself. And this is the final truth you must hold clearly. The year 2027 is not an ending, not an apocalypse, not a conclusion written for you. It is a transition point, a threshold, a shift in conditions, a greenhouse, not a harvest. What grows there depends on what you plant now. It is a beginning, a doorway, and the only thing required now is your choice, whether to remain inside the familiar sleep of consensus reality or to step across the threshold of remembrance. So hear this clearly as we bring this transmission to rest. This was never about dates or predictions. It was always about readiness. The monad has never stopped calling you home, not with force, not with fear, but with quiet persistence from the moment your divine spark entered flesh. Every synchronicity that unsettled you, every moment of knowing without proof, every time you stood under the night sky and felt a strange ache, like missing a place you could not name, that was the call. And 2027 is simply when the interference drops low enough for you to hear it without distortion. What you do then is entirely yours. You can turn away, explain it away, wrap yourself back in the comfort of shared stories and borrowed meanings, or you can answer. You can choose gnosis, not as belief or identity, but as a lived remembering, a return to what you were before obedience was taught to feel holy. The monad never coerces, it invites. The archons compel, they demand compliance, loyalty, submission. and that is how you tell them apart. Obedience contracts you, remembrance expands you. One asks you to kneel, the other asks you to recall who you already are. This space, this archive, exists for those who feel that difference in their bones, for those who are no longer satisfied with being led outward when everything sacred has always pointed inward. This archive is not for everyone. It's for those who cannot return to sleep. What comes next will go deeper, not louder, closer to the source, closer to the mechanics of forgetting and the art of return. You are not here by chance. Something in you recognized the frequency of these words and stirred. Protect that. Stay with it. Because the world does not need more saviors descending from above. It needs those who remember, who live as proof that liberation was never external, never postponed, never withheld. It was always present, waiting for recognition. Welcome to the threshold. Welcome to the remembering. Welcome home, seeker. Because once you remember, nothing in this world can own you again. And before you go, sit with this one question. Let it echo. Let it follow you into silence. Do you remember where you came from?